Hey there, welcome to episode 38 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this on Wednesday, July 31st, 2024. It's just after noon. Today we'll be speaking of the Donut Man. Do you know the Donut Man? Hopefully wherever you found your audio program, such as this one, you're able to locate the episode description, wherein you will find the show notes with four links for today's episode, 2 the usual shameless self-promotion, and 2 regarding the Donut Man. First, I'll read the summary of today's episode. Then I will remind you, or for the newcomers, what is Quaggling Sand? Today's episode is anyone around the greater Glendora area. By the way, this is very near San Dimas, if you are a Bill and Ted fan. Anyone near the greater Glendora area in Southern California will have become quite familiar at any and all hours of the goodness that came from the Donut Man, and still does, by the way. Grab a tiger tail and maybe a coffee and listen to the story I have to tell. Quaggling Sand is my weekly audio program wherein there are stories to tell, maybe a moral or a lesson of some sort, but not always. Usually they're just random mentions. Did you hear the Amazon tones there? Always listening, always watching. The Quaggling Sand is named for a term I coined when I was very young. You might call it pins and needles. It is the return of circulation to a limb that was otherwise numb. Kind of what I envision when I'm recalling these random tales. So yes, episode 38, The Donut Man. Today's links, first 2, of course, my where to find me and how, and if you want to support these efforts in a small way, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. I use these to provide updates and links and so on to the public without having to maintain a website. That is to say, I don't need to host or maintain or concern myself with updates to and so on. These are out-of-band platforms. They're popular and well-known, so there's maybe some trust in there somewhere. It's where I linked my various projects and so on. The Buy Me a Coffee site is basically a glorified link tree. It's a profile page. I can put links to the various programs, the GitHub projects, and even links to my favorite coffee beans that I actually drink or actually brew to drink. By the way, any funds that you choose to, and you're under no obligation to, and any funds you choose to donate to the cause will go toward coffee, just like in the name. Ko-fi.com, more of an announcement site. Man, I hope very soon I will have some announcements regarding getting websites published. Been super duper busy. Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program for some details on that, and Cafe Genius Impresario about entrepreneurial endeavors in the greater Vegas area. Not only mine, but it's been a long time since I've had a guest on. One of the things I need to do is to go back out and locate some people that want to talk about their entrepreneurial efforts. Getting the word out in Vegas, if you are not building a stadium or tearing down a resort, is tricky. It's something we're working on. TheDonutMan.com. Donut spelled D-O-N-U-T. The Donut Man. If you check out the website, you'll find the 2 locations. The only one of the 2 I've been to is in Glendora, as I've intimated here. It's on Route 66. It looks like it's the original building with all of the original artwork. It looks like a hole in the wall, but definitely good stuff. So the Donut Man, you can check that out. I'm sort of surprised there's not more photos on the website, but these are modern times. When we were going to the Donut Man, there was no website, so I guess that's something. If you want to see pictures, they do have an Instagram account, Donut Man CA, California. So Instagram.com/DonutManCA if you're using the web, or just DonutManCA through the Instagram application. The Donut Man has plenty of photos taken by them and surely 10 or 100x taken by others. The photo I used at the cover art for this episode is a photo I took myself. I actually, rather than featuring the usual, I went for the apple beignets. So if you, it's a small picture, of course, but that's what that is. I took that photo myself. So, in the beginning, when I arrived at Harvey Mudd College in August of 1989, there were mentions in the lookbook, which was our Facebook. I didn't really know what a lookbook was, so it didn't impress me either way. There was no Facebook at the time. But the lookbook was literally a book, a photocopied, not professionally bound or anything, but it was a booklet, I guess, of photos of the incoming students, the incoming freshman class or frosh class, and a whole mess of useful information for incoming people like myself. Terminology, the jargon of Harvey Mudd College, pinball, the cue, which is a quarter. Always have quarters handy for laundry and pinball. And there were a list of places to check out. At the time, it was actually called Foster's Donuts, so I'm pretty sure the first lookbook said Foster's Donuts. I mean, it had to, because this the news had not taken place yet. There was another business. It was a donut chain called Foster Family Donuts that was displeased at the naming collision. They were displeased enough so that there was a lawsuit, some sort of legal sparring took place. And of course, everybody heard about it. So random conversation in our dorm lounge through the days might be, did you hear that the Foster Family Donuts is forcing them to change their name? Kind of sucks, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously no visits to Foster Family Donuts. People would visit what would become the Donut Man as a show of support and so on. So everybody knew about it. The owner of the place, Jim, fairly engaged, as we'll get to at the end of this episode. So it was one of those things. In fact, I think for the duration of my time at Harvey Mudd, because the upper class people always referred to it as Foster's, it was still Foster's. So even though eventually it would be called the Donut Man, and the Donut Man is fine, it's probably even more appropriate. Jim is the Donut Man after all. So the Donut Man it would be. And we got over it. Fun fact, Noggles became Del Taco. But for the duration of my time, any upper class people who wanted to go on a Noggles Taco Tuesday run, they meant Del Taco. So not a big deal. As Shakespeare was heard to ask, would a strawberry donut by any other name taste as sweet? And of course it would. So the Donut Man became the place. The Donut Man is in Glendora, which is right down the street. I think it was 8 miles. And it's still there. It's on Route 66. Or I guess if you're from Southern California, the 66, Foothill Boulevard. Harvey Mudd College, also on Foothill Boulevard in Claremont, California. Claremont located right next to Montclair. Because if you're bored, just switch names. Switch words in the name. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I believe it still is. Harvey Mudd had a Gonzo Unicycle Madness Club. One of their, I think every semester, events would be to ride unicycles the 8 miles each way to the Donut Man, and there are many photos to be found of unicycle riders returning from the Donut Man with donut boxes on their heads, holding them on their head with one hand, maintaining balance with the other, perhaps. So it was definitely a landmark. It was a destination at any time, any hour of the day or night, usually at night. And it was close enough for a donut run at any time. This was not a daily or even weekly occurrence for any particular person. That would be ridiculous. The Donut Man is famous for their cinnamon rolls. If you can imagine a standard donut box, collapsible, sort of pulpy, brownish cardboard. Cinnamon rolls, you can only fit 2 or maybe 1 in that box. Tiger tails could fit the length of the box. They're pretty big. So you'd not be having a cinnamon roll every day. Not going to happen. But I have to say, if you grab one of those and you warm it up, a little butter on it, delicious. Once in a while, not once a week. But certainly anytime someone would say donuts, Foster's, everybody knew what that meant. Speaking of special occasions, which any visit to Foster's was, but special occasions on campus, every semester, as most educational institutions do, or every quarter, there are final exams, finals week. We had quiet hours for the 23 hours and 45 minutes each day through the week. I want to say it started on Saturday and it ended on Friday, something like that. But either way, 23 hours and 45 minutes of silence. Not quite like that movie. No one would come and kill you or eat you or anything, but you're expected to not play music, to not shoot hockey pucks at things, to not create a ruckus. Pinball was a special case, so you could play pinball, just no yelling. Just keeping it quiet for the studying. But for 15 minutes every day, noisy minutes, I want to say it started at like 10:45 or something. 15 minutes of absolute mayhem. Any music, any speakers, any breakable items, anything you could hit. If there was a light post that you wanted to smack with something, whatever. Have at it. Let loose. And then at the end of noisy minutes, everybody would wander down, almost like almost like the time machine when it's all clear. Everybody would sort of wander down to the mud hole, which was in the basement of our cafeteria, the Platt cafeteria, I think it is, Platt Hall, named after the first president of the college. To get various free snacks. There was usually a sponsor, or they were always paid for by it was an open bar of various snacks. One of the pizza places down the street from us, Checkerboard Pizza, was often featured in there somewhere. Another completely supportive business in town. So Checkerboard, but of course the favorite night, the best night, where you would be assured of 100% attendance from anyone and then anyone else, was when it was donut night. I was the food committee chairperson in my sophomore year. I was actually I was on the food committee representing West Dorm, and then the chairperson had to step down. So I ascended to the role. And this meant that I was responsible. I didn't know this when I took the job. I was responsible for the Noisy Minutes food arrangements. So luckily they were mostly done by the time he had stepped down. But there was the matter of any other arrangements that had been made or anybody else who was participating. And again, it was the usual suspects. So Checkerboard Pizza, they knew how to deliver pizza. That was not a problem. So we're talking, our college campus, our charter maximum, I think, was 600 or 800 at the time. So you're talking a few hundred people wandering down to grab some pizza. So it's at least 2 or 3 pizzas. If the donut man delivered, I'm sure he would have done the same thing. But for the purposes of this exercise, I had to get the school van, the Harvey Mudd van, which was like a little Astro van. Luckily, I think they took the seats out. Well, now that I think about it, they may not have. Go down to the donut man, pick up, I don't even know how many boxes of donuts of all shapes and sizes. Cinnamon rolls, tiger tails, beignets, normal, cream-filled, iced, sprinkles, the works, everything. They got the usual stuff. So I filled the van up with these boxes of donuts, and this will go towards the end of this episode when we cover this. But as was always the case with Jim and most of the people that work there, if they knew, if they had been briefed on the situation. But there was always an extra box. Like, oh, here's some for you. Like, I have hundreds of donuts in the back of this van. They're like, yes, but now you also have 10 in the front. And there were always donut holes floating around and stuff. So, that worked out nicely. I'm sure, I cannot remember if it was not full price, but there was some deal. It was not like a donation, but it was definitely a sponsor-style relationship We'll get into that a little bit as well. But yeah, so the most popular person in the mud hole is the person carrying hundreds of Donut Man donuts, to be sure. We had this really dumb thing. We had a few dumb things. For a school with so many smart people, there were a lot of dumb things. One of them, the donut rally. Oh, I just realized my air conditioner's on. Hang on a second. All right, yeah, air conditioner. Well, I've noticed that the air conditioner, I don't know if it's inductively coupling or not, puts a lot of noise in my recordings when it's running. So I usually turn it off. So there it goes. So yeah, noisy minutes, always popular to show up with those donuts, and unbelievably popular with everyone, universally understood and known. Of course, you know the Donut Man. So that's the sort of brand loyalty anyone might hope for. So every semester, like I said, we do dumb things. Not every semester, every day. One of them was the donut rally. You can already tell where this is going. The rules were simple. I don't even know if they still do it. It was probably more exciting when there were no cell phones and no maps, no phone maps. But we had a no map rule. Anyway, so the donut rally, simple. People in cars. So if you had a car, you could be the driver, fill the car with people, at least two, I think. In fact, I believe Tim in his Porsche 914 was a team of two. So it was probably best to have at least two people or even number of people. You could have no maps, so you had to go by memory. And I'm going to assume if they're still doing this, that you're just not allowed to look up where the locations are. And before you say, well, do you remember, if you didn't know already, Harvey Mudd College has its honor code. This enables open book tests and generally implicit trust in the students. So the same would apply here. So don't use your phone, don't use your GPS. But so the team must go into donut shops based on their donut shop knowledge alone. So you could do some recon before, I suppose. One donut must be consumed for each pair of people, and you could split them any way you wanted. So if you had 4 people, maybe one person eats 2 donuts, or each person has a half, or however you wanted to break that down. Every 5th stop, each person must consume 1 full donut. So you want to be strategic about that. You had to call in to Donut Central, and that probably would be easier with a phone. So when stopping at the Donut Man, each person on the team had to have a cinnamon roll. I think that was the rule. Or everybody had to have a donut, at least a donut for everyone at the Donut Man, regardless of where it was in the 5 rotation. I think it was a cinnamon roll, though, to just add to the volume. Timing was critical in this case. It was the star of the evening, of course. If you're not a fan of Foster's at this point in your college career, you're missing out. And then, of course, the Donut Man, the rename. So the Donut Rally was almost certainly inspired by the power of the Donut Man or Foster's. Reporting into the Donut Central. In the old days when you didn't have a cell phone, this would mean finding a phone booth or some other way to call in. So the calls were sporadic. People would try to call in when they could. There were extra bonus points for getting tickets of any kind, moving violations or otherwise. So I believe someone got a ticket for making an illegal U-turn to get to a phone booth. So they got extra points. Good for them. So you had to call in periodically. The Donut Central maintained a 4x8 whiteboard with team updates and sort of like election night, I suppose. And it was located, of course, in the West Dorm Lounge with a wired phone dragged out from a single fishbowl. This was a dorm room on the ground floor with a window facing into the courtyard for all to see. So a phone, classic beige, bakelite phone. Could probably kill somebody with that thing. With a very long phone wire brought out to the lounge for donut updates. The winning team at the end of the 2-hour donut rally would be the largest number of donuts per person. Some sort of mathematical transformation would occur. And the winning team, aside from the notoriety and celebrity, would receive, of course, a dozen donuts. I competed only once. I was on Heaven and Dan I believe it was Dave was out of town. So it was Eric, Bob, and me. One of the Erics is now, unfortunately, the late Eric. The other one, early. And Bob, of course. Bob, who I just emailed the other day. He will be in Vegas for New Year's. So I'll probably run into him. Maybe. After graduation, my donatary research, whenever a visit to the SoCal, Southern California area was on the agenda, of course, plans were made to visit the Donut Man. And there were several spaces that were on the map to stop by. Definitely would stop by Sanam Luang, which was our favorite Thai restaurant. I would see the same people. They would, hey Dan, how's it going? It was like still being there. It was good times. I'll do a separate episode about Sanam Luang. That was probably a life-changing restaurant for a few different reasons. But anyway, so stop by the Donut Man, usually on the way out. So that is if I was driving, which was like 95% of the time, I would drive down to Southern California, hang out, visit friends. This would be at least 3 years, probably not many more than that, maybe at most 3 years. By the time I graduated, of course, the 3 years of students younger than me would be people I knew, people I had interacted with, and so on. After that, not quite the same. So on the way out, after spending a couple of days in the Claremont area, all of the classic sites, so familiar. One last stop, Glendora, grab some donuts, bring them back to the coworkers, and crazy as this would sound, I would occasionally, if I wasn't there on the weekend, I would leave. I knew at this point how many to the minute, how long it would take, how many hours and minutes to drive, sometimes straight to work. So it was usually 5.5 hours, and give or take, but 5.5, 5:35, 5:25. So the usual gas stops, the errands on the way out. I would stop at Sanam Luang, have some Thai's coffee and a last meal. They would close at, I think, 2 a.m. And so if I left by then, I would return home. I would get home at 7:30 and head to work with donuts for everybody, or almost. A small number of times, I made a road trip specifically to get donuts. This sounds nuts, but why not? Once I started visiting Thai Town also, which is West Hollywood area, I would make the typical or the standard visits. So I would visit the Sanam Luang there. I would visit the Bang Kanom Thai, which makes excellent Thai desserts, traditional Thai desserts. Sometimes stop at the Bang Lok Market, pick up things. And this was important because Sanam Luang in Pomona was bought by someone else. And the market went from being Bang Lak, which was Southeast Asian, to and there's nothing wrong with this, but it became a Hispanic market. So just changed the flavor of the shopping center there in Pomona. So head to Thai Town. The Thai dessert place was amazing. There was also another grocery store there that had even more stuff. So if there was ever a need for traditional, and this would take place after I met my Bay Area contingent of Thai people. Oh, if you're going to Southern California, can you stop and get some, I'll never forget, Pantai Norasing. Got to get the Pantai Norasing ingredients for the mom, for critical recipe ingredients. So sometimes I would go down there just for donuts and then maybe run an errand. But once or twice, actual donut trip. That didn't happen too often, and it stopped happening eventually because why? Why do I need to drive so far for just donuts? That's ridiculous. But it was fun when I did it. It was not uncommon, however. Now, I was not the only one, I should say. For the upper classes, the people that were older than me, graduated before me, I don't know that it stuck around. In fact, if I were ever to go to Harvey Mudd College to visit anyone, I wouldn't know anyone, but I would visit the places like the Donut Man, and I would ask them what the terrain is like. But people would come in. So when I was a sophomore or junior, there would be people who would return visiting, and they would have a box of donuts with them, etc. I had heard tales of people converging in Claremont to meet up, having some donuts, etc. So not totally crazy, but there was one reasonably crazy, or at least noteworthy adventure. I was working at Jawbone, makers of the infamous Bluetooth headsets, the Jambox, Bluetooth speaker, etc. We discovered through discussion that one of my colleagues, Valerie, was related to Jim, the owner of the Donut Man, and she definitely called him Uncle Donut. Appropriate. So this had to be a thing. She gave him a call. I think I was in her cubicle when she called him and said, my friend went to RV College, Dan, he's gonna come down there. And oh yeah, send him down. No problem. So I got in my car, drove down to the Donut Man. I don't know what time I got there. It was some early time in the morning. The plan was to drive down. I drove down late at night, arrived in Glendora sometime very early morning. They were literally slicing strawberries to put in the beignets. So they're on overturned 5-gallon buckets slicing strawberries. And they're doing their normal thing. So Jim, oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah, how are things? Webster, Harvey Mudd, donuts. Yep. So I reminded him about, not that he would remember specifically, but I reminded him about a van full of donuts for Noisy Minutes. Oh, yeah, that's always fun. Love handing over hundreds of donuts to people. It's a good time. So he said, well, why don't you come on in, and if you want to have a coffee, they have coffee machines, or coffee pots making coffee. So come on in, hang out. We're making a bunch of donuts. And I had a plan for an order, and he's like, yeah, we're going to make a bunch of this and that. And he said, would it be better if we gave you the strawberry donuts deconstructed, and then you can make them up there? That way they don't get all gooey and moist and whatever. They don't soak through, so they'll stay fresh. And I said, really? And he's like, oh yeah, we do that all the time. So I basically had some assembly required donuts. I filled up my car, but not the full. I had a Scion XB, so I filled up the back, not really a trunk, but definitely had like a dozen boxes. Not the usual measurements because they were deconstructed donuts, but tons of donuts, more donuts than one person would buy at a usual early morning visit to the Donut Man, but par for the course, generally speaking. So I was inside the Donut Man, though. I have a photo looking over Jim's shoulder as he's talking to a customer through the window, so I can see the back of their shirts. And if ever there was a need for proof that I was inside the Donut Man, there it is. I was going to use that picture for the cover art, but it's kind of obscure. Like, what is this? Pictures of donuts. That's always clear. So they were making these beignets, and it was strawberry season. And if it were peach season, they would be making peach beignets. And of course, I always like the apple beignets. Those are not really so seasonal. I'm not sure what kind of apples they use, but they were always good. So when I filled my car up, it was not quite like Noisy Minutes, but my car had a lot more donuts than usual, and headed back up to Jawbone so that I could get there by noonish. So I showed up for work a little late, but with donuts in tow, and people were assembling donuts, and Valerie, of course, oh yeah, I remember, Jim's great, Uncle Donut, great. And it was a nice experience. However, not everybody was so into the donuts, so there were a lot of donuts left over. So I figured, okay, I'll just take them to my local down the street from where I live, and we'll put them in the corner. I was known for showing up with a bunch of ice cream or bundt cakes, so this was nothing new for me to walk in there with random dessert items. And good times and donuts were had by all. So since then, a second location has opened. I think it's in a mall. I've never been. It's on the website, thedonutman.com, if you want to check it out. This is not an advertisement. It's more of a plug. Obviously, kind of a fan, and I'd be very impressed to see a Vegas Donut Man. I think he would kill. But let us bring this story to an end with a lesson in brand loyalty. I am talking right now about a single donut shop. This happens sometimes. There are people that make good things, donuts or otherwise. They develop a fandom. This is probably part of the reason I find food trucks so appealing, because they can actually move around. But so the Donut Man, by any name, Foster's, whatever, is a place that I have driven hundreds of miles to reach, a place that has been a part of our educational lore at Harvey Mudd College throughout. I assume it still is. Like I said, I would ask if I do go down there. And a place that would always appear on any list of must-try spots in our sector of Southern California chaos. I do know that Jim was on various morning shows and he was award-winning. So, there's a little donut shop down in Glendora near Pasadena and so on. So he was a minor celebrity, probably still is. Going up to the window, placing an order at any time, and uttering the secret word would always yield a discount, maybe some gratis donut holes. There were always donut holes floating around. Often they were warm, which is horrible. This was a great way to impress someone if there was a newbie, whether it was a freshman, a frosh. I don't know why frosh came about, but fresh person, I don't know. First year mudder or place to bring family or visitors. Oh, let's go check out the Donut Man. And wait, why did they give you an extra box of donuts? Horrible. You could flaunt some clout and blowing the way with a cinnamon roll or a tiger tail or the strawberry and peach beignets. Always get, especially if you get the cream cheese in there. I assume they're still doing that. Would always get a smile, at least, a mouth agape, a satisfied look at the end. At the end of the day, Jim was always there, physically in the place or virtually. Was always there to sponsor or support or otherwise be a virtual member of our educational community at Harvey Mudd College. So he could very well have been a professor of donuts. I think it was repaid at least a few times over. And he has kept the same standard of simplicity and excellence the whole time. So he didn't try to become like he didn't try to take over Foster's Family Donuts. He didn't become a 100 location donut shop all around Southern California. He didn't branch out or franchise. There's no Donut Man franchise in Las Vegas. That would be something to talk about though. So he's kept it reasonably simple. 2 locations. I have a photo somewhere, or maybe it's on his Instagram or both, of a 40-year banner. Thanks for 40 years. And so that was years ago. So it's got to be 50 now or thereabouts. And he's got his 2 shops. He had one for most of that time. Now he's got 2. And there are people who have probably been with him through the whole journey. And certainly people I went to college with would not be opposed. In fact, I went and got donuts from the Donut Man when we were doing America's Greatest Makers. That was another special trip out to Glendora from the Hollywood area. There were people that would very happily stop by the Donut Man if they were anywhere nearby based on these fond memories, and they would be happy to know that those memories would probably be still intact. And this is, I guess, how you make fans and customers for life, is you treat them like normal people. You go a little bit overboard now and then, and they'll do the same. So there's something to be taken from this in general. And if you do go to the Donut Man in Glendora, especially, Jim will have no idea who I am unless you were to describe all this context. But if I were to go there and say, remember I was here to get those donuts for Valerie, I'm sure he would remember that. But do stop by, go grab a donut, at least one, maybe a box, get some donut holes, and enjoy. Don't forget to check out buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo or Ko-fi.com/DanHugo. No obligation to spend any money, but just to keep up with any projects that I add. And if the chips align, if the stars unfold, I don't even know which metaphor I want to go with here, there will be websites and other projects and so on. There are projects going on right now, but they're not public facing just yet. It's very tiring, but such is life. Now I will go and try to get some more tea, because I believe the smoke that is in Vegas, which is always the case when there's a fire anywhere in the Southwest, the smoke lands in Vegas. We have very orange sunsets. Orange, if you're from California. Orange, if you're not. Our sunsets are markedly more orange, but that is the fact of life in Vegas. If it's not mushroom clouds, then it's clouds of smoke from fires. And that's where I'll leave it. Thank you so much for listening. Go have a donut.